Some of the signs that have already occurred according to the Muslims are signs like the birth of the Prophet. That was a sign according to the Prophet. The Prophet also said that the death of Umar was a sign, and the death of Uthman. He said that the fall of Constantinople, which occurred 800 years after the hadith was recorded, he said the fall of Constantinople was a sign. He said the fall of Rome also to the Muslims, that the city of Rome would become Muslim, which hasn't happened yet. Right? The Pope. And also, so that would be a later sign that haven't occurred. But in terms of already occurred, they would be signs that have happened. There was a fire that the Prophet predicted in Medina, which was a result of a volcano that erupted. And he said that Medina would be confronted with a massive fire. And that occurred. And several other events that are mentioned in the tradition. The signs that have occurred and continue to intensify. One of them that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that one of the signs would be that intoxicants would be widely used. So you can see this happening in the Muslim world and just intensifying from quite some time ago. Another sign would be nakedness, that people would begin to remove their clothes. And he said until it would get to the point where people would actually walk around in the marketplaces in shorts with their thighs fully exposed. Right? It's in a hadith, al-mashyu fil aswaq wal afkhadu badiyatun, walking in marketplaces with the thighs fully exposed. He said also that people would have sexual intercourse in front of other people was a sign of the end of time. He said that it would get so bad that you would see people fornicating in public places, and the best people would be people who would say, "Can't you do that somewhere else?" Another one would be speed in travel. He said great distances would be traversed in very short times. And he said also that people would hop between the clouds and the earth. Al-qafsu bayn al-ardi was-sama'. And he said that there would be musical instruments would be everywhere. And he said that also that people would dance with instruments on their head, which some have interpreted as headphones. That they would dance with instruments on their head, and they would spend the whole night dancing like that. And he also said that you would see singing women prevalent in public spaces. Because traditionally that was something that people did in private things, but he said it would become out open into the public. And he said that there would be many people he said takthur al-hawsat, which would be whisperings, like there would be many confused people that would have a lot of psychological type of problems. So, I mean, I could go on and on, it gets quite depressing. Those are signs. Now then there's the big ones. In which the Prophet, the biggest of all, is called the Antichrist, which people understand.
Just a quick question. Is this in the Quran, Hadith? Or
Hadith literature. The vast majority of the signs of the end of time are related to Hadith literature, although some are in the Quran. One of them is that a clear smoke would appear over cities towards the end of time. It's in Surah Al-Dukhan. Some people have interpreted as that. Yeah, dukhan is smoke, gas. It's the same word used for gas in Arabic. Dukhan is used for gas as well, because the Arabs didn't. Ghaz is a modern word for the Arabs. Dukhan was used for gas as well.
Could clear mean like transparent?
No, clear mean it would be everybody would see it.
Oh, I see.
Right? And it says from the evil that people were doing. Another a major sign is the Dajjal. Now I just want to read because I think it's very interesting. This was written in the last century, but it's taken out of classical Arabic books.
Is this the Antichrist?
Yeah, this is about the Antichrist. The word in Arabic is from Dajjala. It means to smear a camel with tar. In other words, covering the whole body with tar. Smearing the part that is mangy or scabies. So it has the idea of hiding illness or sickness, covering it over. right? Covering it over with a black pitch. To lie, to conceal truth with falsehood, concealing the truth. He enchanted or fascinated. So the idea that the Antichrist is an enchanter or a fascinator. People are fascinated by him. He compressed, he traversed the regions or tracts of the earth or land. Now, the Prophet said that the Dajjal would enter every city on the planet. When they asked him what would his speed be like, he said like a wind that leaves a cloud in its trail. كَرِيحٍ اسْتَدْبَرَتْهُ السَّحَابِ literally means like a wind that leads a cloud in its trail. And in another tradition, he said he would ride a white donkey made of iron whose span between his two ears was 40 cubits. بَغْلَةٌ min hadid, as the hadith says. And then he says, to confuse, to mix things, having one eye. The Prophet Muhammad... Did you have a question?
How do you spell this? What's this word Dajjal?
Dajjal. Dajjal is the word in Arabic for Antichrist, which is better translated by the Arabs in the Arabic language as the imposter Christ.
But Christ is used, huh?
Oh, Christ, yeah, Masih ad-Dajjal, the false Messiah. Very much so.
In Islam, the concept of the Messiah is a one-time thing represented by Jesus of Nazareth. Or
Yeah, Jesus is seen as the Messiah.
the Messiah. So this is an anti...
This is going to be
Jesus the
anti-Jesus.
Christ.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's interesting because if you study the Islamic Jesus, I think it gives you a very good picture of the idea of an anti-Jesus. Because anti in Greek, antis also means in place of, instead of. It doesn't really mean against. The original meaning of anti in Greek as a prefix means instead of. And that's closer to the Arabic interpretation, which is imposter or in place of, pretending to be. The Islamic Jesus, and I actually translate, I'm hoping to get it out this year, but I translate all of the Arabic sayings of Jesus because there's actually more sayings in the Islamic tradition of Jesus than there are in the New Testament. And most of them deal with the dangers of the world, of materialism. So I find it really interesting that, this idea of an imposter, that Jesus is, the whole thrust of the Islamic Jesus is salvation through giving up material wants. And the idea of an antichrist is salvation through desire of material goods, that it is material goods that will make you happy, that is material goods that will save you. So I think there's a very materialistic element in here. And also the idea of being one-eyed is that part of binocular vision is depth perception, which you lose with one eye. And so the idea that that the Dajjal or the Antichrist does not have a depth perception. He's a two-dimensional being. He sees things in two dimensions. And some of the Muslim scholars do not consider it an individual, but most do. And and you'll see it as we go on here. Having one eye is one of them. Also to gild a thing. So in other words, you take lead, you put gold over it. That's yudajjal. So to make something that's cheap or insignificant look very worthwhile or significant. Cover the land with water. He put his land into a right or proper state, prepared it, improved it with dung. So to spread dung on the earth. To spread feces on the earth. Dajjal, dung for manuring land. And then Dujjal is refuse, lowest, basest, or meanest sort of people. The lowest, basest, or meanest sort of people. Dajjal, a gilder, a liar, conceals truth with falsehood, who deceives, deludes, beguiles, circumvents, outwits, much or often, very deceitful, the great deceiver. And then a great company of men, Dajjala in Arabic means a great company of men journeying together, covering the ground by their multitude, or a company of men journeying together, carrying goods for sale. Right? So trafficking goods all over the place. Masih al-Kadhab, the false Christ or Antichrist, is to be a certain man. Right? Comes forth in the last days. So having one eye or eyebrow. So you get the idea there. This is classical, coming out of classical dictionaries.